Joe Morgan is Regional Secretary of the GMB, who got a fantastic 4-to-1 majority for strike action on Wednesday. Joe has been putting himself at the front of the anti-cut fight for a long time, and he's going to hopefully tell us how that's going to continue.
Good evening, comrades, and thanks for inviting me along to speak this evening. Well, first of all, comrades, if I could just say, obviously, and unfortunately for some colleagues who are going to follow me, I'll probably say some things that they will say as well, so I'll have to make apologies for that beforehand. But we are on the brink of what is going to be the biggest strike since 1926, since the general strike. We're going to have over 3 million public service workers walking out on strike. We've had in the press just recently, I don't know whether you heard it, but Michael Gove, the Minister for Education, who basically said that taking public sector workers and school teachers and school support staff and dinner ladies and school caretakers out on strike would be wrong. Now what I'd like to say to Michael Gove is that this is about the fight for justice. That's what it's all about. It's about fighting for what's right. And I'll say on behalf of the trade union movement and the GMB that when you're fighting for justice and fighting for what is required, it's right. And if it's wrong to send people out, he said to deny school children of a day's education, and yet for a publicity stunt, the government didn't mind denying school children a day of education to celebrate the royal wedding. I mean, that was an absolute nonsense. And then he had the audacity afterwards, Osborne had the audacity afterwards to blame the slump in the economy because he had an extra day's bank holiday that day. Exactly. They couldn't make it up, they couldn't. But this is not just an attack on pensions, comrades. This is a general attack on public services per se. It's all about public versus private. The government, as we all know, have got big friends in the private sector, and they want to get the business when they privatise everything from the NHS through to all general public services. And we've also got problems with some of our colleagues in the Labour movement, and because this is being recorded, I won't embarrass the particular Labour MP, but there are some Labour MPs who seem to be hand in glove with the coalition government. And just at the Western Labour Party a couple of weekends ago, I had to find a quiet little place to sit down and write a speech that I was going to deliver. And while I was doing it, a Labour MP came in and spent 15 minutes interrupting me, and I could tell him he was interrupting me while I was trying to write a speech, but trying to convince me, because he said, oh, there's something very interesting. The government is saying that if people don't go out for a full day on the 30th of November and just take a 15-minute protest strike, that they won't dock them any pay. And I said, well, why are you telling me that? And he said, well, I think the unions are missing a trick. I think you should really do that. And I said to him, listen, we're having a day's strike, not a bloody tea break. I said, so what we're going to do, we're going to go out on strike for a day. But this same Labour MP, incidentally, has been going around, and he's written to his constituents yesterday as urging them not to take strike action. So in a few moments, we're going to speak.
Name and shame.
No, I won't embarrass him. But he's from Wall. Anyway, this is also, comrades, as I said, it's a general attack on public services versus private. It's also a general attack on employment rights. We've just recently had an announcement, and it's going to go through Parliament. We are combating it, but it's going to go through Parliament, where all the wrongs in the economy at the moment, they're not to do with the bankers, they've got nothing to do with the massive deficit that was imposed upon us by the bankers. It's got nothing to do with that. It's because it's not easy enough to sack people in the UK. That's what the problem is. And what they've said now, the government has said, is that they're going to introduce new legislation that will make it easier to sack people. Now, that's supposed to be giving a boost to the economy. They're talking about, well, they're going to extend the right to claim unfair dismissal from 12 months to 2 years, so they're going to put it back, to when we had the last Tory government in power. They're now talking about making people pay £250 to £300 to lodge an employment tribunal. And if it goes ahead to tribunal, they then want them to pay £1,000. Now this is supposed to give a kickstart to the economy. How that's going to do it, God only knows. And also, when people have been sacked, that's the time when they haven't got a job, they've got no income coming in, and yet this Tory-led government is saying you've got to put up £250 and then put £1,000 forward. So we've seen what this government is about. It's all about attacking the working class in society. Today they've also announced that there's going to be a review on collective redundancies in 2 years, again, because we say that it's not easy enough for employers to hire and fire in this country. They've already said that they're going to reduce the consultation period from 90 days notice, and I was speaking to a comrade just before, and she said she's been in discussions today about meaningful consultation, which we know is a nonsense anyway. But they're now talking about reducing it to 30 days. All about making it easier to sack people, nothing to do with the economy, and they're saying that the economy is stagnating because of employment legislation. Well, I think that's a slap in the face at the moment for working class people when unemployment is at the highest it's been for 17 years, and we've got over 1 million people announced last week, over 1 million youth unemployed in this country, and that is a lost generation, and it will never be retrieved, and that's because of the policies of this government. And I think it's an absolute disgrace that while we've got over 1 million youngsters on the dole, they're talking about making it easier to sack people and making it easier for employers to take people on, but with certain guidelines. So we have got a lost generation, and the government's answer is to make it easier to sack people in a country where we have some of the weakest employment legislation in the Western world. We just had our comrade and sister from Venezuela, Egles, talking about what to us is the stuff of dreams, basically. 40% rise in public services pay, a minimum of 25% a year in the minimum salaries. But, comrades, how do we combat it? And that's what colleagues have said what we've got to do. Well, the way we need to combat it, we need to realise that next Wednesday is not the beginning. Next Wednesday is not the end, rather. Next Wednesday is just the beginning of our fight. And what we've got to do, we've got to mobilise as many people as possible in the movements, in the trade union and the labour movements. Get the general public on our side, and in the main, they are on our side. If you explain to them what this, we were out on Saturday, plenty of people were in the audience here, we were all out on Saturday in Birmingham City Centre, talking to people, getting them to sign our petitions and explaining to them. And some people did originally say, oh, hang on, public sector works, you've got gold-plated pension schemes. And when we explained to them exactly what the pension schemes are, they realised how badly done to they are compared to others in the community. And what we need to do is make sure that we point out to the public that the Tories are looking after their friends in big business, they're looking after the friends in society, and they always do. And that's one thing you have to admire the Tories for. You know, and I don't admire them for hardly anything. You've got to admire them that they always look after their own. And yet, what do we do when we get into power? We make excuse and apology after apology as to why we can't do it for our ordinary supporters, the working class people. And I think that's a disgrace for the Labour movement. As I said, it's not just the right-wing Tories and the right-wing Lib Dems that we've got to combat. We've got some in our own movements, in our own Labour Party. But let's make the 30th the beginning. It's not just a day of action. It's the start of the fight back by the working class movements. It's the start of the fight back by the working class people in society. So not only recapture our future, and that's what we have to do. We have to recapture our future, but we've also got to recapture our party. The Labour Party was formed and set up by the trade union movement. We've got an obligation to our children and our grandchildren to make sure that we recapture the Labour movement and make sure that we make it our Labour Party again. And the only way to do that is by starting next May to make sure we dump the coalition local governments in Birmingham. And then when we get to the general election, and I don't think it will get to 2015, I hope it doesn't, we've got to make sure that we dump the Tories and the Lib Dems at the earliest opportunity before 2015. This is the beginning, comrades. We can overcome and we can win. Thank you for listening.